The rarest move in chess. I know what you're thinking. You think you have all the answers. I was like you once. It's gotta be en passant checkmate, right? You know, the weird pawn move done in a way to cause checkmate. Or, wait, maybe castling checkmate is more rare. Or something with pawn under promotion. There's a simple way to get to the bottom of this. Let's just look at a bunch of games of chess. Whatever happens the least often must be the rarest, right? Like, if we ask a million people what their favorite type of pizza is, we could find the most rare pizza topping, which we already know is rhubarb. If we want to do this, we needed some way of talking about moves. Like, what is a rare move? What even is a move? What does it mean to play chess? What are we doing again? Okay, we're going to talk about moves in terms of standard algebraic notation. That's the normal way people talk about chess moves. Like when they say e4 and nf6, it's what they're writing down on those little pieces of paper. It's a simple notation. You just say what piece moved where. That's the basic idea, at least. We just need to give names to places and pieces. So we give every square on the board coordinates with a letter and number, and we give every piece a letter of its own. We can use these letters and numbers to write down moves, like bc4 means the bishop moves to c4. And there's only a couple extra things to know. X means capture, nx-f3 means the knight captures the piece on f3. Pawn moves don't bother with naming the piece. e5 just means you move your pawn to e5. You add a plus to indicate a check. qa5 plus means your queen moves to a5 and the opponent's king is now in check. And similarly, the hash sign means checkmate. Pound sign? What do you call this thing? Octothorpe. Yeah, means checkmate. Kingside castle is O-O. Queenside castle is O-O-O. You don't even need to say whose turn it is. White goes first and then you alternate. This means the same move can happen from either side, like e takes d5, e takes d5. With this notation, you can describe an entire game of chess. Instead of writing down how the board looks after every move, which would be very tedious, you just write down the moves in order and you can reconstruct the board at any point. So if we want to find the rarest move, it's sufficient to look for the rarest notation of moves. Well, okay, there's probably many ways you could do it, but we're going to be looking for the rarest notation. There's one last important complication to mention about this notation. You'll notice this notation is very implicit. All you do is say the type of piece and the destination, and infer which source piece you're talking about. But what if two pieces could move to the same square? Like, both of these knights could move to e5. In cases like this, we need to disambiguate moves. If it's ambiguous which piece to move, you include the file of the source piece, like nd-e5. If it's still ambiguous, you use the rank instead, like n3-e5. If it's still ambiguous, you use both, like nd3-e5. Okay, now we can talk about rare moves. At this point, I thought, okay, like, there's so many games of chess happening all the time, we can just take all the moves in a bunch of games, count how many times we see each move notation, sort by that count, and see which one is at the bottom. But it turns out there's a lot of possible moves. At this point, I went on a bit of a crusade to understand what is every possible legal move notation according to standard algebraic notation. That way I could understand if I'd seen every possible move. This was much more interesting than I expected. I kept finding new edge cases and eventually had to write a program to help simulate all the possibilities. But honestly, that's a video of its own. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing such a video. Once I understood every possible move notation, I was ready to look for the rarest move. But something wasn't quite adding up. I downloaded all the master level games from lichess.org. I thought maybe it just wasn't enough games, so I started downloading games from anyone on Lichess. But as I kept downloading more and more months of data, it became clear that there was a problem. Eventually, I had gone through all of the games ever played on Lichess, containing 5 billion games and 9 terabytes of data. That's 16 games a second, every second for 10 years. Out of all the possible moves, a full 30% that were theoretically possible, I never saw occur even once. My dream of saying that a specific move, like qa1, h8, was the rarest was shattered. Instead, I found there are entire categories of moves that are rare. So, I've identified 4 candidates for the rarest category of move in chess. As we go through them, place your bets for which one you think will be the rarest according to the data. Let's start with a warm-up to get acquainted with how these rare moves work. Generally, rare moves require multiple unique circumstances to overlap together. Like, most moves aren't captures, and most moves aren't checkmate, but even less moves are both capture and checkmate. So, with that in mind, let's start by looking at the queen. Recall how in our algebraic notation, if it was ambiguous which piece would move, we needed to disambiguate. Unsurprisingly, rare moves are all based on disambiguation, since they require pieces to be in certain positions, which doesn't happen all the time. You only have one queen to start, so to require disambiguation, you'll need to promote a pawn. Once we have two queens, if they both see the same target square, we need to disambiguate with their file, like QC e6. If they both live on the same file, then we need to use the rank, like Q4 e6. But what if we promote another pawn to make 3 queens? Then, if there were 2 queens on the same rank and 2 queens on the same file, and they all saw the same destination square, we would need to disambiguate with both the rank and file, like QC8 e6. This move is immediately rare because it requires 3 queens arranged together. However, we can keep stacking rarity. Checkmate can only happen once per game, so we expect the same move causing checkmate, QC8 e6 mate, to be even rarer. Finally, if we also capture a piece when causing checkmate, we get QC8 takes e6 mate for a doubly disambiguated queen capture checkmate. Whew, that is quite a move. But this was just the warm-up. Now we're ready for our first real candidate move. Let's talk about bishops. Again, we'll look at disambiguated moves. Wait a second, why do you ever need to disambiguate bishop moves? Each bishop always stays on the same color when moving diagonally, and since the 2 bishops start on different colors, it's always unambiguous which bishop you mean to move. The 2 bishops live in entirely separate worlds. Well, this would be true, except for pesky pawn underpromotion. If you promote a pawn to a bishop, it can be on the same color as another bishop, and therefore we may require disambiguation. Of course, 98% of the time people promote pawns to queens, but you are allowed to promote to a bishop. We've arrived at the rare move, a rank disambiguated bishop capture checkmate. Remember that we first disambiguate with the file, and only disambiguate with the rank if both bishops are on the exact same file. That is, file disambiguation is preferred to rank disambiguation. With 8 columns, you'd probably expect 2 pieces to be on the same file around 1/8 of the time. That ends up being true here, with rank-based disambiguation about 1/8 as likely as file-based. As with the rare queen move we showed before, we tack on capture and checkmate to compound the rarity. Such a move would look like this: B2 takes E4 mate. To recap, this requires underpromoting a pawn to have 2 bishops on the same color. This requires arranging them so that they're on the same file. It must capture a piece, and it must cause checkmate. That leaves us with a pretty darn rare move. I bet en passant mate doesn't sound so rare anymore, does it? The next rare move might not surprise you. It's the doubly disambiguated bishop capture checkmate. If you underpromote at least 2 pawns to bishops, both on the same color, then it's possible to arrange your bishops in such a way that they need both rank and file disambiguation. If we look back at how much rarer rank disambiguated moves are compared to file-based, well, doubly disambiguated moves are even rarer. The arrangement requires the bishops to sit in a square around a target square. Only 1/3 of the corners of this square actually requires double disambiguation, since the others only see 1 bishop on their same rank and file. As before, also including a capture and checkmate compounds the rarity. Such a move would look like B-A8 takes C6 mate. There's actually another rare move here. Something very interesting happens when we look at doubly disambiguated bishop checkmates that are not captures. Because all 3 bishops see the same target square, it means both diagonals from that square will remain attacked no matter which bishop you move there. Thus, if there's no enemy piece being captured, a doubly disambiguated bishop move won't attack any new squares. So how could this possibly be a checkmate? Turns out this can be a checkmate, but only via a discovered attack. The bishop you move has to reveal another piece that actually causes the checkmate. I like this move because it's one of the few times that a move implies that it must be a discovered attack. Such a move would look like B-C6 E4 mate. Finally, we have our last rare move candidate, a doubly disambiguated knight capture checkmate. Finally, something other than a bishop. 2 knights can require disambiguation, and in fact, disambiguating knight moves is common. But to get double disambiguation, we again need to underpromote at least 1 pawn. It's kind of hard for knights to cause checkmates because they don't control as many squares as other pieces. For this rare move, the knight must be arranged in a specific rectangle, and then capture a piece and cause checkmate. This move might surprise you in rarity. Due to how knights move, the rectangle of where the knights must be is quite specific, and not as lenient as queens or bishops. The destination square cannot be anywhere along the outer edge of the board, and if you inset 1 more square, only allows half as many positions of knights. This gives less leeway for such an arrangement. Such a move would look like n d4 takes e6 mate. And that's our 4 rare move candidates. Side note, I'm sure you've noticed all these moves require pawn under promotion and having the opponent not resign. These are highly unlikely situations to arise in high-level games, which in a sense contributes to the rarity. A move being rare doesn't mean it's good, like getting struck by lightning. Under promotion itself is often a sign of a game not being taken very seriously. It's always better to just promote to a queen. I mean, you could envision cases where you must under-promote to avoid stalemate to justify these moves being theoretically possible in a real professional chess game with no funny business, but such a game would be so rare you'd never actually see it happen. Alright, so far everything we've done here has been completely theoretical. If we want to get a real answer for what's the rarest move, we need to look at the data. From all the data Lichess makes available, I found 342 billion moves. So can we talk about rare moves? Let's talk about rare moves. Some starter stats. Pawn mates are not really uncommon, with about 0.01% of moves being a pawn mate. Very few of these are en passant mates, but it's still on the order of tens of thousands of occurrences. Castling with checkmate, O-O mate, and O-O mate make up 0.00001% of moves. I found about 50,000 instances out of the 342 billion. Interestingly, long castle mates is twice as common as short castle mates, probably because the rook ends up more in the center where the king starts out. These moves are pretty rare, but it's just the beginning. A king move that captures a piece and causes checkmate, like king takes a1 mate, is actually even rarer than either of these, with just 13,677 occurrences, just 1/4 as many as castle checkmates. This is probably rare because such a mate requires a discovery, since the king can't directly threaten the other king. And with that, we're ready to see which of our candidates is actually the most rare. Place your bets now! First up is our warm-up move, doubly disambiguated queen moves. There were 42 billion queen moves, out of which I found 63,199 doubly disambiguated queen moves. But our idea was to look for captures with checkmate. When looking at doubly disambiguated queen capture checkmates, I found, drumroll, 179. Just 179 times in 342 billion moves. That's 0.00000005%. Now that's pretty rare. As we talked about, it requires 2 pawns to promote, then sit in a square, then capture a piece, and cause a checkmate in one move. That's a lot to ask for. Okay, but again, that's just the warm-up. Now for our first real candidate for rare move. It's rank disambiguated bishop capture checkmates. I found 211,294 disambiguated bishop moves, of which only 22,035 were rank disambiguated. And how many of those cause capture and checkmate? A measly 26. Yep, that's 0.000000008% of moves. Since knights can require rank disambiguation without pawn under promotion, the equivalent knight move happens 200 times more often than our rank disambiguated bishop capture checkmate. We're getting into pretty rare territory now. And now let's talk about non-capture bishop double disambiguated checkmates. These were the ones that required a discovered attack after under-promoting at least 2 pawns. And how many of these did we find? Drumroll. 1. Yep, that's right. I found exactly 1 of these. On January 22nd, 2022, N. Marcus N. and Maulilusmius played a blitz game which ended in bf1 g2 mate. Indeed, they had 3 bishops in a square and moved the corner one, revealing a discovered attack via a queen. Wow. So that's it then. 1 out of 342 billion. 0.000000003%. This must be the rarest move. Well, let's keep going. Let's now talk about knight double disambiguations. I kind of thought these were an underdog in the race, like it's just a knight move. But these are truly very rare. The constraints on how you have to position the knights make it harder to execute than you might expect. I only found 1,973 knight double disambiguations. And how many of these were capture and checkmate? None. 0. I never found any. But judging from the ratio of capture checkmates from other moves, we probably need to look at several billion more games before we'd expect to see one by chance. So maybe we can expect one of these on Lichess at some point this decade. So is this it? What could be rarer than never? Well, finally we have the bishop double disambiguation capture checkmate. These are much rarer than single disambiguation. I only found 665 bishop double disambiguations. And care to guess how many of these are captures and checkmates? That's right, none of them. Okay, well, we went looking for rare moves, but it ended up being so rare that all we found is a bunch of zeros. Now how are we supposed to crown a winner if it's a tie for 0 out of 342 billion? Well, ideally we just keep analyzing data until we had some hits, but I went through all the data there was. Chess.com has something like 8x more games, but unfortunately the data is not available to download, and we just won't know without the data. In my view, doubly disambiguated bishop capture checkmates seem likely to be rarer than doubly disambiguated knight capture checkmates. Of all the pieces, bishop double disambiguations occur significantly less than the others, with 1/3 as many as knight double disambiguations. I found 3 knight double disambiguation captures, but 0 bishop double disambiguation captures. Bishop double disambiguation requires at least 2 pawn underpromotions instead of just 1, and they have to be on the same color. So we'll unconvincingly give the crown to bishop double disambiguation capture checkmates. Great job. There's an argument to be made here that if a move has never happened, can you really call it rare? Like, the minimum threshold should be 1. Like, let's say Spaghetti Monsters invaded Earth and beat Magnus Carlsen at chess. The word I would use to describe that wouldn't be rare. Though since we only have data from Lee chess, we have to assume these moves have happened somewhere at some point in history. So I think it's safe to call them rare moves. Whew. This was so much more complicated than I ever expected it to be. I can't tell you the number of times I remade this video upon finding a newer, even rarer move or postponed to analyze just one more month of data. My code is available if you'd like to analyze it yourself. You can look at some extra details of the statistics there too. Thanks for watching.